All right, welcome to the first of its kind, world-changing manufacturers network. Lisa Ryan has her ears to the ground and her heart in the game. Get ongoing education and new connections right here with Lisa and the Manufacturers Network. Buckle your seat, listen, and spread the word. Here's Lisa.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, Meaghan Ziemba. Meaghan is an industrial tech writer, brand storyteller, and marketer with a BA and MA in professional and technical writing. She's the founder and host of Mavens of Manufacturing, a live video broadcast that highlights women in engineering and manufacturing, aiming to inspire the next generation of industry professionals. Meaghan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
So share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do with Mavens of Manufacturing.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, I'm an industrial tech writer. So I've been writing for engineering and manufacturing since 2008. I was one of those kids that didn't really know what I wanted to do, and my student counselor and my parents peer pressured me into going to college right after graduating high school. And because I tested so well in English, I was always pressured into going into teaching or maybe be a college professor or something in marketing. And none of those really sounded very exciting to me. But I ended up going to the University of Minnesota, almost flunked out twice. I was undecided in my major. And then I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. So I had to move back to Wisconsin. I transferred to the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. And that's where I learned about professional and technical writing. A former classmate of mine, she was a single mom at the time as well, and she was talking about track G is what the track name was for professional and technical writing. And I asked her why she chose that track, and she said, honestly, it has the better job opportunities and it pays more money. And being a single mom, that's what my goal is. And I agreed with her, so I signed up for the classes, and my first class in that, we had to write instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And out of the 12 to 15 students that were in the class, we did not get one sandwich completed because just the way we wrote our instructions based off of our personal experiences, you forget those minor steps that are in between. So is the peanut butter in the cupboard? Do you have to open up the door to get into the cupboard? Do you have to take off the lid? Do you keep the butter knife in the jar? Do you wipe the butter knife off or get like a new butter knife for the jelly portion of it? So it was really interesting to see how literally people take written word and then based off of what their life experience is, what sort of demographic background they have, you really interpret language differently based on those things. So it was very interesting. When I graduated college, I got a job right away at a trade publication in Madison, Wisconsin called Product Design and Development. It's no longer around, unfortunately, but that is where I really got to combine my storytelling skills and my creative writing skills with my tech writing skills. So initially, I started out writing product releases and making sure that the format was the same and consistent throughout the magazine. So we had to make sure that we were labeling everything the same way. If we were abbreviating things a certain way, we had to keep that consistent. And then eventually I got to do press releases, but then also editorial stories. So I spoke with a lot of engineers during that time, which was a lot of fun because they're hard to break through if you aren't used to working with engineers. So it was really interesting just to tap their brain and learn how it works and all of the crazy ideas that they had. And then eventually taking a napkin sketch and putting it all the way through production and creating a useful product that we all use today that make our lives easier. So I was very fascinated with that. When I did that for about 7 years, I wanted to see if I could apply my skill set somewhere else that wasn't in manufacturing and engineering. And I started doing marketing for a liberal arts college and completely got bored out of my mind. So I came back to engineering and manufacturing, worked at different companies in their marketing department, and really helped them establish their brand voice, and then also helped get their trade show stuff situated and what kind of theme we were going to do, what sort of marketing campaigns were we going to do to help generate traffic to their booth. And then fast forward to 2020, I was married at the time. I had two more kids, and I was talking to my former husband, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I quit my full-time job and just start my own writing company? Because I think I have enough clients where I can do at least part-time work, and then I can stay at home full-time with the kids." And he was all for it. Then the pandemic hit. He lost his job, so I had to go back to corporate, ended up with a photochemical etching company in Chicago. And because I was at home for the first 6 months because they weren't letting anybody leave their house, I was going to LinkedIn to keep my sanity. And I noticed that there were a lot of conversations happening on that channel, but it was all the guys that were in the space. So I would reach out to them and say, "Hey, there's women here too that are doing some amazing things. You should invite them on their show." They never did that. So I said, "Screw it. I'm going to start my own thing." And I started Mavens of Manufacturing. And to this day, I've interviewed over 190 some women within engineering and manufacturing, from the shop floor all the way to the C-suite. I've interviewed a couple students and apprenticeships and high school students that are thinking about a career in engineering and manufacturing. And I also interviewed a couple original Rosie the Riveters when I first started the podcast. So it's been a really cool adventure. It wasn't something that I was expecting to last as long as it has, but it's been really a fantastic learning experience. I've created so many friendships with some of the guests that have come on to Mavens, and I've just learned a lot about what women are doing in this space. So it's been quite the journey and a lot of fun.
Wow, that sounds like it. I think about, because I'm also geared more for English than math, but it sounds like you have that really nice where you can write where you get the words, but then also the technology part of it seems to come really naturally to you as well. Or maybe it's just the fascination has made you better at it.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people ask what my engineering background is, and I'm like, I don't have one. I am a writer by trade, and my skill set is asking the right questions and getting that information and being able to turn it into something that's not boring and overly filled with jargon. And I think my natural curiosity for I tell people I'm a nerd for information. So I want to learn about everything and a lot of things as much as I can. And I think that natural curiosity makes me a really good storyteller and a writer. So it's filling my cup in all angles.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And with over 190 women on your show, what are you seeing as far as some of the common challenges that women are facing in the manufacturing industry? And what are you seeing that organizations are doing to help address them?
So the first thing that I saw a theme in was a lot of women fell into this space by accident. It wasn't something that they pursued on purpose. So I think there's just a general awareness problem. And when girls are going through middle school and high school, they don't necessarily think that engineering and manufacturing is a space for them, especially if they're not good at things like math or science. And that's just not the case. There's so many opportunities outside of design engineer or working on a shop floor. Like there's other areas in marketing and finance and accounting and even leadership opportunities that don't really involve a lot of hands-on, but strategic decision making and critical thinking. And I think we as a sector need to do a better job, not just educating the younger generations, but also educating parents within communities, also educating other community leaders that are outside manufacturing. So if you're working at a bank or a hospital or anything like that, like we need to bring the whole community together and show them what engineering and manufacturing is and what it can be. And then also just creating partnerships with the schools and the guidance counselors, because a lot of them don't know how to talk about some of the things that we're doing here in industry. So I do see a lot of companies building those partnerships, specifically with the high schools and the community colleges. They're either sponsoring like robotics teams within FIRST, or they're helping with Skills USA, or they're just donating materials or money, just flat out writing a check and giving it to certain people. They're also developing partnerships with MEP, so the manufacturing extension partnerships that exist all over the United States, and learning what sort of curriculum do we need to build within this specific area, because manufacturing is different all over the United States. There's some regions that focus more on the pumps and gas industry. There's some areas that focus more on automation and robotics. There's some areas that focus more on all of the electronics and like semiconductors. So really understanding what the need is, what's being created, and then developing curriculum into that. And then the other thing that I see is it's not so much focusing on the qualifications or the experience that people might have, but what sort of soft skills do they have, and what sort of transferable skills that do they have that we can actually bring in and then upskill them if necessary. I know that other manufacturers are looking into their schedules and developing sort of a hybrid schedule or a flex schedule. If anybody who is a single parent or a family and they have kids that they have to go and pick up, they're creating opportunities for parents or caregivers to actually come into work at a certain time and leave at a certain time, as long as they're making up those hours and they keep production. So there's different things at all levels that are changing. And I think that's going to make the whole environment as a whole more inclusive as well as diverse. And that's going to help with our innovation if we can keep doing some of these things that they're doing.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of times with the college and community college level, one of the programs I'm involved with here in Cleveland is STEM Goes Red for Girls. It's a division of the American Heart Association. And we actually focus on 7th to 9th grade girls, introducing them to STEM careers. We have our big event at the Cleveland Science Center every year. Last year, we had 300 girls there. But the funny part is that there was 12 scholarships, 12 $5,000 scholarships, and about 70 girls signed up to get these scholarships. And I was the judging committee. And I will tell you what, I have never in my life felt such a failure as when I'm reading the applications of these 7th and 9th grade girls who are like the president of their class, and they're on all these sports teams, and they're doing this, and they raised $40,000 for their charity, and they can take apart and put together an engine. And the enthusiasm, it really, even looking at some of those younger girls starting in that 7th grade and just changing the conversation. And I love what you said too about the guidance counselors and the parents, because if we can get them into the conversation, they're more likely to be okay with their daughters pursuing that instead of the traditional 4-year college route.
Yeah, I think there's like the bad taste in some of the older generation, because back in the late 90s, early 2000s in my community, manufacturing took a really big hit. And all of my friends who had the plan of going to the factories that their parents and their grandparents worked in had to come up with a different plan because that opportunity was no longer available. There was this thought that manufacturing is not a stable place and it's not a stable career pathway, and you're always going to be bouncing from one job to the next. And that's just not the case. Right now, we have this workforce shortage issue. So it is a great opportunity to come in because you can be picky and choosy about where you want to go and who you want to work with, because everyone right now is fighting for that right talent to come through the door. And I just think with that this is our grandfather's manufacturing, it's still stuck in some of that older generation. And I remember going to a career fair in McHenry County in Illinois, and I was talking to one of the teachers, and she said a girl stopped by her table to talk about their underwater robotics program. Mm-hmm. And she was asking all of the right questions, and her mom just had a look on her face. And so she was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I thought she was making this up. Like, I thought she was creating this whole fantasy. And I didn't realize there were actually robotics that were going underwater, and you guys have a program here for it. So the mom had no idea that underwater robotics was even a thing. So she got excited to learn that it was actually a thing. Her daughter wasn't making it up. And now her daughter is like on their team and they're doing really well. And she's heavily involved with everything that our daughter does. Again, it's that education portion of it. And with the dock strikes that happened not too long ago, one of the big things was, robotics are taking our jobs. And there are a lot of comments on LinkedIn where everybody was like, they should know the benefits and the advantages, but they don't know because they're
Right.
not in the sector like we are. And it's up to us to really educate the public. Hey, these are the benefits. This is what's actually the advantages of. And the other thing that we need to understand is someone who's been in a job for 20 to 30 plus years might not want to change. They might not want to learn a new technology. So we got to think about how do we fill their needs as well as we're going along this path of automating more things and integrating some of these advanced technologies. So again, we need that open channel of communication.
And the people that have been in those roles for 20 or 30 years, they have that legacy knowledge of how the company got started, why we do what we do, what do we do, all of that that walks out the door when that baby boomer finally decides to retire and takes all that knowledge with them. Like you said, figuring out how we keep the legacy, but also incorporate the new technology. And a lot of that with mentoring, you are giving the respect that your more tenured staff wants because they do have the legacy and giving them the opportunity to take that into the next generation. So what are you seeing as far as the role that mentorship is playing in attracting and retaining women in manufacturing?
It's a big part of the equation, and every single woman that I've talked to on Mavens has paid tribute to all of their mentors because without them, they probably would have not continued to pursue this sector because back in the day, there was less of us. Now there's around 30% representation here in the United States. On a global scale, we represent like 16% of engineering, which is really small on a global scale. But women have paid so much tribute to even their male mentors because without them, they probably would have quit or walked away from the sector completely. And it's that legacy knowledge, it's the skills that they wanted to pursue, it's that encouragement. In imposter syndrome is one of those terms that's being thrown around there, and I'm starting to not like that term because it's not really a syndrome. It's self-doubt. And there was a commencement speech made by a woman who founded the Girls Who Code organization, and she was talking about bike face. And when bicycles first were invented, there was this syndrome called bike face, and it apparently only affected women who wanted to ride bikes. So it's similar to what imposter syndrome is doing. It's made to oppress us and make us not want to pursue something. So it was just interesting to hear her commencement speech and the similarities between this concept of bike face and what imposter syndrome is. So it's very important for women to connect with the professionals that they want to gain the skills from. So don't just rely on one demographic. Make sure you're asking both men and women to be your mentor. And it's okay to ask. I just learned that like a few years ago that I could ask someone to be my mentor. Before I thought they needed to pick me out of the crowd or something, but you can definitely ask people to be your mentor. And the other thing is there is an organization called Women in Manufacturing, and they just had their first Men as Allies conference. And it was really an eye opener for me to hear the male perspective of what was making them uncomfortable about supporting women in this space. How can I support women but not come across as awkward or weird or offensive? What sort of things do I need to change on how I talk about things so that I'm not off-putting? And then there were some dads at this conference and they were like, my issue is I was being a dad to these women instead of being their colleague. So I was being overprotective and thinking that I needed to protect them when in reality, they could do things on their own. And it took one of the women workers of him to actually say, I can do this. I'm perfectly okay doing this and comfortable doing it. So it was such an eye opener to hear that side of conversation because initially I was just assuming a lot of guys knew how to approach women and they knew how to talk to us and they knew how to support us, but that's not the case. And the other eye-opening moment was we had a nightly reception there And the next day, I moderated a panel with 3 women in the space who, again, talked highly of all of their mentors, of getting in the leadership positions that they were in. And one of them called out the guys and was like, yesterday at the reception, how many of you purposely came to us to ask questions? And she was like, you all went to your groups and did what you normally do. You flocked to the other men because that's your comfort zone. And she's, so now flip it. She's like, when we have to go to these trade shows or these conferences, we always have to step outside of our comfort zone to be part of the conversations that you guys are having, especially if we're the one or one of few in a room. We always have to be the one. So it was definitely an interesting conference to attend, and they're planning on doing it again this year at their summit. So I'm super excited to just see how it has grown and expanded, because there were so many good key moments from that conference.
Wow. Yeah, I saw the postings on LinkedIn and it looked fantastic. I've worked with women in manufacturing. They're based here in Cleveland, so that's helpful. But the interesting thing is that when I was in the welding industry, there was nothing like that around. I was one of part of 10% of the workforce that were women. I remember I was calling on this one die casting company, and he would, when I would cold call the plant, he would actually sneak out the back door because he would say that no damn woman should be in the welding industry. So seeing how far it's come with women in manufacturing and being around that energy, it's just so great. The other thing that I noticed that associations are starting to do is they're starting these women in events. I've spoken at women in material handling, HVACR, and women in manufacturing, but it almost seems like the guys will say, I know, let's have a little happy hour for the women, let them get together and see what happens, expecting maybe 5 or 10 to show up. And they're like, holy cow. And before you know it, the women have their own event because there's such a need for it and such a passion for it. And just being around other women who are as passionate about doing what you do and being in this industry that we've been trying to get in for so long, it's just really magical. But I also liked what you had to say about the guys' experience, because again, I just take it for granted too that they know how to talk to women. So to hear that they don't.
There's a bunch of us that got together during the pandemic on LinkedIn, and we started a LinkedIn chat, and we've all become really good friends. And it's a group of women in automation and a bunch of business owners and just women leaders. And when Automate came around about 2 years ago in Detroit, we decided that we wanted to have a women's night and just get together and learn about each other more, because most of our communication was happening on LinkedIn. And it was so funny to see the comments that some of the guys were putting on the post. Wait, why can't the guys join this? And it was all fun and games and everything. But again, we're not trying to kick out the guys. We need men in this industry too. Diversity of thought is huge for innovation and innovation. And we don't want to kick anyone out. But when you get around a group of people that have had the same experiences as you had, and if they're moms or if they're single moms or if they've had certain mental health issues or certain finance issues when trying to start their own business, it's really just comforting to know that there's other women that have been going through the same thing, and it's easier to talk to them, and we can say certain things around each other that we can't really say around men, and it's vice versa. It was just funny to see some of the guys like, wait, can we come? And we're like, you can come after we're done with this time. Like, you can meet us out here. But again, with the women events, I know a lot of guys are hesitant to join those type of events because it says women, but I'm always like, no, come to these events. It's okay if you're one of few or just the only one. See how we communicate with one another, see what issues we're struggling with, see what barriers we're having a hard time getting over, and then maybe you can offer some perspective or light on those types of conversations. So I always try to encourage men to come to those events and hear what's being discussed, because it just is better for growth overall for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, what are some of the initiatives or programs that you're seeing that are really helping to promote that diversity and inclusion, with women and basically and their allies in the manufacturing sector?
At what level? Are you talking like younger, or are you talking like in the workforce right now?
You know what? Either one. Just some of the things so the people listening can get some ideas as far as what initiatives they may start thinking about putting in.
Yeah, so I think one of the best things to do as a company, again, is to go to your local schools and see if they're competing in Skills USA, or if they're doing a robotics team, and try to pull in as many people as possible to be part of those sort of situations, because it's not just about what they're building and designing, but they're doing everything from creating a business plan, creating a business portfolio, learning about financing, how to maintain a budget, how to pitch to get donations, creating events so that they can raise funds to go towards their robot. It's a little bit of everything that everyone can figure out what they like best or not like. So I think that's one of the best things to get a diverse group of people in. In terms of the workforce, there's conversations around how do we rewrite our jobs descriptions so that they're more inclusive and not unconsciously separating certain groups of people. There's a woman named Kathy Gallowitz. She's focused on veterans and how they can be really good hires for engineering and manufacturing. I talked to a former hockey player who is now selling for the pumps industry, and he was telling me, he was like, I played hockey my whole life, and then when I couldn't play anymore, I thought that was it. What am I supposed to do with my life? So any like athlete that's retiring or maybe got injured and can't go back, they would be a good candidate for engineering and manufacturing. Anybody that has been in jail or incarcerated for something. I have a friend named Drew Crow. His story is just phenomenal. So if you're not following him, please follow him. But he was incarcerated, and his whole story talks about how manufacturing saved his life and it gave him a second chance. And now he's traveling around the United States talking to younger kids, saying, you don't have to pick this path. You can actually join engineering and manufacturing. You can go to a community college. You don't have to go to a four-year college, and you can start making money right away and be debt free by the time you hit your third or fourth year of working, if not sooner. He actually came to the high school I graduated from, and he had kids in tears, because a lot of the kids that go to that high school think, I either have to do a life of crime, I have to sell drugs, or I have to join a gang. And they don't have to do any of that. They can actually get sponsorship and get scholarships and go to a community college or four-year if they want to, and do something in engineering and manufacturing and actually start a really good life right after they graduate out of high school. The high school I graduated from also has a certificate program. They got a really cool welding teacher. He is from the Navy. He is actually a certified welding inspector. So all of his kids that go through his program get a welding certification before they even graduate. So when they graduate out of high school, they can actually get a job right away, because I think it's like the most basic level of certification. But they at least have that foundation. So if they want to get a job right away, they can, or they can continue and get the next level up certification, but they already have something by the time they graduate. So I think what manufacturers need to do is look into some of those programs and see if they can mimic them in their place as well too, and create programs for reskilling and upskilling. What sort of things can we offer? And is there like tuition reimbursement we can offer anybody that decides to go back to school so that they can level up to that next stage? Or is there schools that we can work with, so when kids are ready to graduate, we can pull them out and put them in an apprenticeship program right away, or even start them before they graduate. And so once they graduate, we can actually hire them on as a full-time employee because they already have that training and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I know. I'm a huge Drew fan. He was actually on my podcast at the very beginning, and I loved his story then, and just seeing him all over LinkedIn and the difference that he's making with
Yeah.
underserved communities. Like you said, yeah, if you are not following Drew Crow, and it's Crow with an E on it, go follow him on LinkedIn because he has a lot of really good support for, again, trying to help close the gap in the jobs that we have and the people that we need.
Yeah. And the thing is, at that stage, there are some kids, and I call them kids, young adults. There are some young adults that know what they want to do and they have a plan and they're going to pursue that plan and be very successful. But if you're like myself, or maybe someone like Drew, you didn't have a lot of options in your own head. You didn't know what you wanted to do. I like a little bit of everything, and I didn't know how that was going to get interpreted into a lifelong profession. So I think with engineering and manufacturing, because it is so broad and there is so many different areas that you can get involved with, it's a great place to start if you don't know what you want to do, because you can always change your mind later and pursue something else, in my opinion.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned was that mom shift of having flexible scheduling so that people with kids could come into work. But what else are you seeing as far as companies supporting work-life balance? Because that is so important to the younger millennials and Gen Z coming in, and not something that we necessarily see in manufacturing, but we need to start asking that question of how we can add more flexibility in our scheduling so that people have that work-life balance.
It's still, I think, a pretty big topic of debate, because there's some companies that are like, no, you have to be here every single day from this time to this time. But I did talk to a gentleman on the East Coast who took over a company when I talked to him was about 2 years ago. So maybe 2.5 now, 3 years almost. And his retention rate skyrocketed ever since he took over. And what he ended up doing was he ended up treating the part-time workers like his full-time salary workers. So they pretty much got the same benefits that the salary workers got. And they actually went down to a 4-day work week instead of Monday through Friday. They now work Monday through Thursday. And I always tell my employees, if it's within an hour or two and you have something that comes up and you need to take off, but as the only thing that they need to do is make up those hours. So if they have to come in on that Friday to make up the hours that they lost, I'm okay with that. It's about treating them human and understanding that things happen unexpectedly, and your employee is not going to be as productive if you don't allow them to be human. So he works really closely. He walks the shop floor all the time. He also offers bonuses to them. And I shouldn't say they're part-time workers, they're the hourly workers and not the salary workers, but he offers bonuses to them. So one of them came to him and said, hey, I think I figured something out where we can decrease the time that we're making this part and actually increase production. And he has, tell you what, try it out. Let's give it about 6 weeks, I think he said was the time frame, or maybe 3 months or something like that. He's like, let's see what the numbers are, come back to me, and if it works, we'll definitely put it in our process. It ended up working and saving them a bunch of money, but also making them a bunch of money. So he ended up giving that hourly worker a bonus, which doesn't happen a lot of the time with hourly workers. I've been an hourly worker before, and I've never gotten a bonus as an hourly worker. So he was just taking some of those benefits that salary workers get, applying them to hourly workers, empowering them to be creative, empowering them to come up with ideas that would change the business. And he hasn't lost very many people since he started that whole process. So I think there's ways to be creative. And again, it all starts with communication. Another thing is when, especially with women, when you hire someone, sitting down with them and asking them what they want their career to be, like where do they want to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, and developing that trajectory plan for them and revisiting it every 6 months to a year so that they know that they're on track. And if they end up changing their mind and not wanting to pursue what they initially had, okay, where else can we put you in this company and see what else we can apply your skill sets to, so that you do end up liking something and you're staying with us, because it's expensive to lose an employee and then have to rehire someone, versus either reskilling them or maybe adjusting their career pathway and finding something that works for both you and the company. So I feel like flex hours is going to be really big, but again, there's a lot of companies out there who just don't want to do it because time is money to them. And if people aren't going to show up for work, then they don't want them working with them. But I've heard so many stories with people putting either a hybrid model in or flex hours and allowing people to come in and adjust around their family schedule, and their production rates have gone up, and so have their retention rates.
Yeah.
So why not do that?
Yeah. I mean, when you treat people like adults, I think a lot of times too, people who have been in business for a long time forget the fact that they were a 20-year-old who didn't really know what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go in their life. But it really has changed with the technology and everything else that we're seeing in the workplace today. As we're getting to the end of our time together, I could talk to you all day on this. But what advice would you give to young women considering a career in manufacturing or engineering?
I would say go for it. Think about what drives you the most and what you're most passionate about. And then definitely go on LinkedIn, because there's not a lot of young people on LinkedIn. They're usually on Instagram or TikTok, but definitely go on LinkedIn and reach out to the companies that you think are the coolest and start asking them questions. Get connected with their leadership, get connected with their sales, ask if you can go to a facility tour, see if you can get that sponsored. I am always pushing manufacturers to connect and be more proactive when connecting with the younger generation. One of the things that I've done over the last 4 years is when IMTS is around, I actually get sponsorship for a bus to bring 40 of the high school students to Chicago. And the kids love it. They love spending the day at the McCormick Center. They love seeing all of the technology and the robotics. So definitely link to companies that you think are cool, that you think you can make a difference at, and just start having those conversations. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because you can make big waves in this industry, and you're not just helping a small group, you're helping large groups. Like, think about all of the technology people use on a daily basis. Think about the cars that people drive, the bridges that they cross, the shoes that they wear, the clothes that they wear. Like, you are making a big difference for everyone around the world when you are part of engineering and manufacturing.
Absolutely. So looking ahead, what are your aspirations for Mavens of Manufacturing?
Yeah, so I am booked out for June of this year. I'm still looking for more guests to book out the rest of the year, but I'm actually writing a book, and I'll be writing it with a gentleman named Jim Mayer, and we are writing about manufacturing culture, but we will be talking about the things that need to change so that when we are trying to recruit younger generations, we're not just showing them like, hey, this is what engineering and manufacturing is, but we're actually showing them how this sector can make their dreams come true. So we're hitting that dream gap that is seen in most women, but also I'm trying to expand it outside of women. I'm trying to expand it to the whole younger generation, because you hear a lot about mental health issues. You hear a lot about kids getting involved in other things and not really thinking highly of themselves. I know my daughter struggled with mental health because she was always on her phone. So I'm trying to create this book to show how manufacturers really can tap into that dream portion of it and get kids really excited and passionate about of making their dreams come true with engineering manufacturing.
Oh, all right. So is that something that we have that's going to come out this year, or what are your hopes for that?
Yes, this year I'm definitely hoping for
Oh,
this
good.
year. So I'm starting to write it now. Jim is going to be collaborating with me on it, but he's a great guy. If you don't follow him, he's part of the
Yeah.
manufacturing connector, but he has such a cool perspective on leadership and culture and how they're highly connected with one another. And if you don't have the right leadership, then the culture is not going to be so great within your company. So he helps businesses really elevate their culture and elevate their leadership, and so that they can have better marketing materials, but also better employees and better productivity. So I'm super excited to be doing this with him.
There is nothing better than holding that baby book in your hand for the first time. So
I'm super excited.
congratulations in advance.
Thank you so much.
Well, Meaghan, like I said, I can talk to you all day long. This has been fascinating. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish that I did, or any closing thoughts for our time together today?
My big ask would be for engineering and manufacturing, as I mentioned before, please put your boots to the ground and don't waste all of your budget on trying to get your next customer, but put some of your budget towards some of these things like First Robotics or Skills USA or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or something. Make sure you're allocating some of it to really bring your community together, because manufacturing is such a big component of economic stability. And if you want the country to be behind your manufacturing efforts, you have to invest in the communities that you're in. So please think about sponsoring kids somehow, some way, if that's bringing them to a trade show, if that's donating parts to their robotics team, if that's donating money to transportation so they can get from one competition to the next. Please do that, because they will remember it, they will be thankful for it, and they will be loyal fans of you for the rest of their life.
All right, Meaghan, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network podcast. Do me a favor and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can grow this network and connect more fantastic folks just like you. You can either send your buddies to the website at manufacturers-network.com or share the Manufacturers Network podcast on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you and your industry friends hang out. The bigger and faster we grow the network, the stronger and deeper the community we'll all have. Thanks again, and I appreciate you.